Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back for step number 7 of the TrackMania Grand League Challenger Series. I am, of course, Snowman, and I am going to be bringing you the cast for the lovely RBG Esports group. Of course, we have Nixo, our main sponsored driver for this afternoon session. And we'll be looking to get into some quality matchups as we've seen in the past weeks. We got some good maps lined up for us today, the fifth one being very much a pace map. So this is going to be a little bit different in terms of we don't have too many overly risky maps minus, say, Launchpad, which would be map number 2. But not too many overly risky maps, and I expect some very tight battles. But before we get into it, of course, we can do a little bit of a refresher on the old step format. So we'll be playing 5 maps. The first 4 will be laps mode with 6 laps each. Your position will, of course, net you a certain amount of points, first being the highest, last being the lowest. Of course, there is a large gap between 8th and 9th position, so getting in the top 8 will be crucial for gathering up all of your points through the first 4 maps. And of course, that will leave us with the 5th map, and also known as the multiplier map. And we'll get into that a little bit as we roll into the first map here. This will be Pool Slide by Kisla. Go ahead and pop on into the round here. We'll be following Nixo, of course. Nixo, of course, a very consistent driver, not necessarily known for his pace, but off to a fantastic start early on in this first lap, running in the first position, actually, right next to Otak here. So names to be looking out for on this step, of course, Otak, Mime, Evon, the 3 that have been very much dominating the competition so far. There's a couple of players that are also just on the edge of playoffs that will be interesting to keep an eye out for. I believe NRGZ is on the edge, as well as Wosao, Quattro, Razi, Cap are all quite close for those top 8 positions, so be interesting to see how they do. But of course, we're going to be following on with Nixo here. Has dropped down a little bit after the first identity section. And identities, of course, are the namesake of the map. They are what differentiate the maps from each other. That is how Nadeo likes to do mapping for the Grand League. Spices things up a bit. Of course, none of these maps will necessarily look the same throughout the entire race, but it's easy to pick out a map from another based on their identities. So Nixo here doing great in the dirt section. Definitely has more experience than the rest of the field in terms of dirt, as he started out as a dirt driver in the older games and has since transitioned into adapting his play more tailored towards the Grand League style of driving. We're going through the pool side here. The tricky part is the plastic and water combination. So when you start sliding on that plastic with water wheels, you will have very, very low grip, less grip than even ice that is present in this game. And we will see in the next map a short ice period. Battling on here in the 4th position. Nixo will again want to get in the top 8. I think any sort of position in the top 8 he will be perfectly happy with. Of course, better is better. But if we see him dropping down a little bit from the leader, that's not the end of the world. Not too many points will be lost. So right around in 5th position, right behind Dofall here. I don't see anyone going for the riskier water bounce strat, but we do see some slides. So Nixo will go for a no slide line where he has to release and just carry his speed through the corner. Other players will go for a slide and then cancel strategy, which can be faster, but is definitely riskier because it's very easy to just miss your slide cancel and just slide out into the barrier. As we see Hydra making a mistake and dropping down, and so able to bump himself up into the 4th position. Again, doing very well, already going into lap number 4. Very consistent, no major mistakes out of him at all, actually. Is about 1.64 seconds back from Mime, who is currently leading, followed by Evon, the 2 Polish drivers that I named earlier. The positions will remain basically constant for now. This is not a map that you can necessarily gain a huge amount of time through the non-identity sectors. You can take the dirt a little bit better, gain a few tenths here and there, as we will see players do. But for the most part, it'll look pretty stationary until we reach this identification here, as we see Hydra and now Soldier poking his nose in to view. But Nixo able to hold him off and maintains that 4th position. We see Link going for a more inside line, but Nixo will have more exit speed and re-overtake. It looks like there's a nice queue forming behind Nixo here, between the 4th and 8th positions. Actually, 9th and 10th are also very, very close. So Nixo has about a second or so back to the 8th position. But it looks like it's going to be super tight for that top 8. Otag just popping into the top 8, able to overtake Soldier and Cap now. And Nixo is not worried by this. In fact, he probably doesn't have cars on at all. The only thing he will see is his position, as it will change through the checkpoints. The 4 changing into a 5 as Link goes for the slide and able to overtake Nixo. He usually also plays with the HUD on, I believe, so he can see the deltas on the live ranking. He will see that, and I believe he checks it every once in a while. But of course, you don't want to check it too much because then you'll start overthinking about it and be focusing on your racing lines. The Nixo is still doing a great job here, running into the final lap of poolside. Well, we see Link making a bit mistake on the edge of the dirt and will lose out on a lot of speed. Drops down behind Nixo into that 5th position. So not to preemptively jinx anything here, but this is a great position for Nixo. I think it'll be his highest position on this map out of the now 5 times that they've played it, excluding the multiplier round they did on it when they first played it, of course. So going into the final identity section here, takes it a bit too tight actually. Is able to maintain some speed, will lose out on a couple positions. Yes, indeed, he will end up finishing 6th, so I did actually jinx him there. He will tie his highest position finish in the 6th spot. Only will lose out on 2 points though, so it's not the end of the world. But I'm sure he'll be kicking himself a little bit. We see Evon actually overtaking Mime and getting the fastest lap bonus of 2 points. So that was quite impressive. Mime must have made a mistake because Evon was quite far back. But Default will finish in 3rd. Link will take 4th. Otak will take 5th. Nixo in 6th. And Cap 7th. Revo in 8th. Revolution actually top 8. We haven't seen that much all steps, so good on him. But we'll be rolling straight into the next map. This will be Launchpad by Nadeo. The most interesting map we will see thus far in terms of wackiness. So most of the map is pretty standard. We'll see our first ice section as shown right here. Players will have to drive at almost 90 degrees to get a little bit of a slide boost. We'll see some plastic, and of course we will see the flying escapades that are the booster ring checkpoints. So Players will have to manage their speed in the air by using a little bit of a combination of acceleration and releasing to rotate the car and line it up through the ring checkpoint. You'll see them doing so in the warm-up here. But you will have way too much speed naturally for the rings. So you have to very much release and manage your speed in order to get through this identity. But these players have played this map this will be the 4th time now. So they'll be well experienced, and I don't expect to see too many mistakes. Unless some players decide they need to push. You can definitely win a lot of speed on the exit. That, of course, is quite risky to do. So see how they line up. Some people will go a bit wider and then kind of swing into the last ring. Others will go very tight. I think Nixo tends to go quite tight. We'll see how he does this. So here's the identity section here. Yes, so he goes pretty tight, rotates his car, and then accelerates out. And some players will go a lot lower and then try to carry more speed, but it doesn't win you too much time for the risk associated with it. But it does win time, and winning time will be able to let you catch up to your rivals if needed. So we will go ahead and roll right into a launch pad. This is map number 2. So with a pretty good start usually on this map, so we'll see how he does. See the players wiggling a little bit on the plastic to gain a little bit extra speed and manage their gear. Going into this very fast grass sector here. Got to release quite a bit on the left-hander turn in order to not completely fly off as we roll straight into the ice. We see a couple players dipping their wheels on the penalty ice, which is the lighter colored ice that will reduce your momentum quite a lot, actually. So those players, Evon and RBG, both drop back into the lower positions. Nixo here drives with the pack in 10th, 11th place, and 12th. Not too big of an issue. Only about 0.6 back from the leaders at the moment. We roll straight into the first second identity. I believe one person made a mistake. Who was that? I think that was Fegley, actually. Fegley will drop down a good 5 seconds, unfortunately. Our next American in, not with the best start, sadly. He will look to recover a bit as he has Cap as well, who seems to have made a pretty large mistake and joined him for company. Nixo here currently sitting in 10th position, so well within the graphs of the top 8. You see the pack has yet to spread out all that much, minus the 2 front runners of Wosile and Mime, who have already gained about a second to Snow in 3rd position. Nixo here hunting down Hydra, a lot better of a grass section. Will close that gap considerably as he carries his speed through the plastic and sets himself up for the identity entry. The Razi going very low and able to overtake NRGZ and Nixo, but almost too much speed going into that first corner. Does slide out and falls back once again. So here again, taking very nice consistent lines, not too much of a risk. Does sometimes require players to make mistakes ahead of him, as he actually takes the ice a bit too inside, has to readjust, but it's not as bad as Razi, who completely bonks into the checkpoint and will drop down quite a bit. Go down into the 13th position now. We see a bit of a gap starting to open up between Nixo and the mid-pack, but still only about a second back from the 8th position. And this is, of course, only our 3rd lap, about to be 4th. Nixo goes a bit wide, will clip on the ring reactor. Must rotate his car around a bit of awkwardly, as he still had the booster, so he didn't want to go flying off as he tried to rotate. Will not lose out on any positions, but will lose out on a lot of time. Now 5 seconds back from that 9th spot. So quite unfortunate there. We'll have to definitely rely on some mistakes by the front runners, but that is not impossible. We'll look to shake off that slight blunder as he rolls into the last 3 remaining laps here. No, that was very much a uncharacteristic mistake, but it was just enough to knock him around and lose out on a decent amount of time. This is a map, of course, that he isn't too comfortable with and hasn't quite ever been comfortable with. So I'm sure he might think of it as a little bit of a write-off. As we pop into the 9th position here, it looks like somebody has fallen down. I think it's Hydra, actually, has fallen down into that 13th position. Nixo now into the 9th spot, only needs one of the top 8 to make a mistake. Any mistake will do, because there are quite a bit of time loss if you make a mistake in the identity. Very much possible here, with 2 rounds of the identity remaining. Takes the ice pretty well with a good amount of exit speed. Will drive into the downward reactor and onto the stadium grass, a sector that we do not often see in any map style nowadays, just due to the block set available in this game. Older games use the ground and stadium grass quite often, actually, but with this game's block set raised up a little bit of a, maybe like half a block's rotation or so, doesn't usually fit well to drop down to the grass, but in this case is used quite well for a nice flowing corner to the left. Well, going into this final lap here, still in 9th, about 6 seconds back from OTAC, who currently sits in the 8th spot. Will definitely require some assistance externally if he wants to grab a top 8 position here. Steve Begley has actually made his way up into the 10th position, recovering a bit after his first lap mistake, so that's pretty good from him. But unfortunately, a bottom 8 final position will not win you too many points, so his effort will be in a slight vein. We go into the final identity here. Looks like nobody out of the top 8 will make a mistake, actually. The Nixo will grab himself that 9th and unfortunate position. Grab only 5 points instead of the 15 that he could have in 8th spot, but not too big of a loss. You look to bounce back in this next map. 3 out of 4 maps in the top 8 is still very good, and will set you up quite well for the multiplier round of the final map. Looks like Mayim was able to take first over Evon that time, so they will be tied in total points as we roll into our 3rd map, which will be Bolt Holes by Rocket. Bolt Holes, commonly referred to as a similar sounding name. So this map will be the longest map per lap that we see in the Grand League Series, at least up until this point. There was one more map that we have yet to discover that will be played on the final step. But the name of the game will be to jump through the holes in the end, thus the name Bolt Holes. And it looks a bit easier than it actually is. The first one especially, because coming out of the tech turn right before it, you can take it well enough to give yourself quite a bit of speed. Too much so, actually, and you have to manage it with a little bit of a release, a little bit of an angle. So by now the players will have it pretty well down. They've played this map enough times now to have a strategy. But still, the slightest miscalculation will result in a nice, healthy bonk. If we see any players making a mistake, they'll be bouncing all over the place, as the center of the bolt hole is made of plastic, and plastic likes to have a nice bouncy feel to it. The players will be finishing up their warm-up here. We'll see Nixo go through the identity, jumping up to the first of the 3 jumps. He'll release and go a little bit straight, does clip, but doesn't lose out too much speed, and then he'll go sideways here, which is probably the easiest of the 3. And then you have to juke to the left. Make sure you do not fly out over and to the right of the tarmac, because you can do that quite easily, and then roll into the finish. But right off the bat here, this will be lap number 1 of bolt holes. Nixo with a great start, but does not get the gear the cleanest on exit, and so will lose out. Just a touch. Goes back into the mid pack as we see his number changing from 5 to 12 to 7. Obviously very close. In the start here, we see one player going a bit too low on the half pipe jump. I believe that was Rozzy. So he will drop down. The OTAC with a very early lead, already opening up about a quarter of a second gap over the rest of the field. That's pretty good. Probably a risk to jump a little bit more than most people would on the first lap. Going into the penalty grass here, and then setting up for the first round of the identity. See some players going straight, others going a little bit juking to the side. We see one clipping. I believe it was a purple car. That might have been Wosile. Yes, looks like it was Wosile. Calf has also made a mistake and will drop down quite a bit. Oh no, Nixo goes just too wide and clips his outside wheel on the ledge of the wall slide there. Not a very common mistake that we see on this map. Might have just been a little bit of a lack of focus, or mentally preparing for the next turns, but whatever the case, he does drop down into the 14th position. Quite unfortunate. We'll have about 3 seconds to make up to the 8th spot now. So not is all lost. We still have, we're only in the 2nd lap of this map, and it's quite a long map. But this is a map that's pretty difficult to make out time on pace alone. There's not too many various lines that you can take to gain or lose time. Very much a Monaco, if you will. Anyone understands that F1 reference. We do see Mime making a mistake here and drops down, has to respawn, makes a mistake again. Probably will take the booster instead of respawning a second time. We also see Hydra floundering a bit in front of Nixo, but is able to make the jump just barely. And I think Revolution has also dropped down. That will boost Nixo up into the 12th position and pull the front runners ever closer to him. Now only 2.5 seconds to the 8th spot. Going into the half pipe jump here. So takes it pretty medium, not too low, not too high. Then he goes for a nice double Neo to go for the inside line there. Not the easiest thing to do, one Neo after the other, but with practice does make perfect. As we see Nixo making a bit of a mistake, tries to take the chicane a little bit earlier than he was supposed to, and will bounce off the wall and lose a little bit of time. Not the biggest mistake, but things like that can get in your head when you're trying to focus on your lines, and then you just make a slight error, slight change in muscle memory. And that can really snap you out of the zone that you had worked yourself into. So he'll look to pull himself back. Catching up to Begley now here. And Begley made a slight touch at the previous grass section. So we get some good fight between the two American drivers. Begley driving for Team 300. If it goes much tighter and will result in a good amount of excess speed. Like it goes super high in the jump. Nixo goes a little bit too low, but it is able to save it actually and still catches up to Begley. Now quite neck and neck as he goes into the tech turn. Very nice entry and exit. Will overtake and pop himself up into the 10th position now. Only 3 seconds back, so the mistake earlier has really not lost him too much time. His actual race pace seems to be quite good compared to the others. And we go into the 4th round of the identity here. We see Evon has suddenly appeared. I believe that means he had to respawn. Yes, indeed. So Nixo moves up into the 9th position. Takes the 3 jumps very cleanly. Only 2.5 seconds now, so he is definitely gaining. Will it be enough, though? That is the question. But with every coming corner, he seems to be closing in that gap to Hydra. Now 2.5 seconds. And again, the double Neo strategy on the inside. It's a very clean. We actually see Nixon popping up into the 8th position now. I don't know who. I believe it was Otak actually has made a mistake. He must have made a massive blunder on the half pipe jump. That's the only thing I can think of that he might have messed up on. If he does like take it very, very tight on the low jump. So Nixo will definitely cash that one. Bumps himself up into the 8th position now. And only 1.7 seconds back from NRGZ, we see him running right in front of us here. Oh my, wow. That was one spectacular mistake. But I'm not even, I think he might have flipped or something. He definitely just clipped the bottom of the bolt hole and was lucky to land on his wheels. But unfortunately, he will lose out quite a bit of time. And his good run into the 8th spot has now been altered. Or tarnished is the word I was thinking of. And he does now drop into the 12th position, unfortunately. So I think you'd be a little bit hard-pressed to reach into the 9th spot. However, the gaps have definitely closed down. He's only 2 seconds back from the 8th spot. So a lot of mistakes in this map, actually. Players maybe not training as much as they necessarily would. We see Fegley and Wosile battling it out for the 9th position, almost on top of each other at this point. So this is a pretty good race, even though we are down in the 12th position. You never know, though. There could be quite a few mistakes here going into the final identity. So lines it up straight, but not straight enough. That will penalize him quite a bit. Does not lose a place, but he will not gain any. We see, well, he does gain 1 as Snow has to take the safer line up the ramps. But that will finish Nixo in 11th. Not what he would have liked. I know he usually feels pretty confident on this map, especially with his more consistent lines. But I think that initial mistake probably snapped him out of his zone, and he wasn't fully able to recover it. We see Mime taking a 15th spot, not something we will usually see. And Default with the 2-point bonus. But Nixon now currently sitting in 10th position, rolling into our 4th and final lap map. This will be Grasshopper by Kisla. This map we saw the players grass sliding on the grass hopping sector, but I do not think any of them will be doing so in this round. If there were any viewers of the Grand League, they might have noticed that Grenady and Tween used a much safer line of dropping into the grass and then just taking the bumpers completely straight. It only would lose them about half a second or so. But when it came to winning rounds, that was obviously quite vital, and I don't think either of them ended up winning a round. But when it does come to 6-lap strategies, that's going to be the main one. Half a second is a lot per lap, but not enough based on how random this map can be, how difficult the grass slide can be as well. So I expect most of the players will be going for the trader strategy, and we can check out in the warm-up. It's a very fast-paced map as well, so losing out on speed will lose out on quite a bit of time. I think the procession will be a little bit more spread out, as it is quite technical. So we see Nixo here going straight into the drop, a little bit of an angle to right himself for the correct bump direction, and then off on his way. I do like this map though, it's pretty fun to watch. I don't think it's too crazy. I think it fits pretty well into what TrackMania Grand League maps should be, or what they should strive to be. Of course, when players were going for the grass slide, it was a bit silly. But with this straight strategy, I think it fits pretty well into the difficulty and entertainment purposes. So roll right into lap number 1 here. So yet again, in that mid-pack, we see a wide touch. I believe that was Fegley. Unfortunately, making a mistake in almost the first corner of the track. We'll drop down about a second or so. The pack already starting to spread out a little bit. Like so in the 12th position with a average start. Not the fastest. We see Evon and Otek in the front. A couple players go wide on the outside. Ooh, we do see some actually going for the grass slide strategy. Very interesting. I believe it was Evon, NRGZ, and someone else. I saw 3 cars going for it. I didn't quite catch the third. But NRGZ has dropped into the 11th spot. Evon currently sits in 6th. So interesting to see these players going for the riskier strategy. I really would not have expected this. And I don't think it gains you that much time for how risky it is. But perhaps they've been practicing it quite a bit. And they feel confident in the risk versus reward. We'll see if they continue that for a 6-lap strategy. They may also be trying to just go for a smooth entry and then a hard turn to the left. I wasn't quite close enough to see. Actually, we're quite close to NRGZ here, so we'll see what he decides to do. He does go straight, actually, this time around. So he'll take it nice and safe. Maybe try to drive it on the first lap and then got a little bit psyched out by when he almost failed and thus dropped down a bit. But that's full speculation, of course, because I didn't see it overly clearly. But Evon has worked his way up into the 3rd position, and I did see a org list tag going to the left. So that might be a win for him. So here, currently sitting in 11th, though, right behind Razi. Nice consistent pace, but not overly quick. This is a map that, with the straighter strategy, will be very pace-oriented. as you're not able to win too much time in the identity or in choices. We see Snow here going for, it looks like, yes, he will go for a slight grass slide and suffers because of it. So Snow will drop quite far down. I don't think he's going to be able to make that last boost bumper with the speed that he had. So yes, he definitely had the respawn and drops down all the way into that 16th spot. There's that risk that I'm talking about, that I was talking about. Can be rewarding, at least in Evon's case, as he currently sits in second, but can be absolutely devastating, as we've seen Snow drop all the way down. So Nixo here now up into the 10th spot thanks to that mistake, but has fallen out of touch a little bit with the front running back. He isn't too far back though, only about a second. So he'll look to push a little bit and try to gain some time through these tech corners here. Does gain quite a bit to NRGZ, as we see nobody in the close vicinity going for the grass slide strategy. We see NRGZ actually clipping the inside of the grass sector there. I think he clipped one of the scenic buildings, and he will lose out on quite a bit of speed and falls down into the final positions, joining his other French comrade. So Nixo will jump up into the 9th spot now as we roll into lap number 5. Our next target is, of course, Default, who currently holds that 8th position barrier. So with a great tech corner section, actually able to close the gap on Default quite considerably. Going into the cruise control ring. So opts to go wide. I think he had a little bit of an awkward setup, so has to adjust, but able to adjust on the fly, which is good. Oh no, he doesn't make it. Oh, he ended up bumping too wide and was not able to correct his line, and will drop down. Actually opts to go for the grass slide on the respawn to save a little bit of time. And gets it pretty well. But he will unfortunately drop all the way down into the 15th spot now as we go into lap number 6. Very unfortunate to see here. It seems like this step has been small mistake city for Nixo. Not quite common out of him, but unfortunately can be very penalizing. But again, all is not lost, as we have the multiplier round to be played. And easily turn 30 points into 150 if you capitalize on your timing correctly. So we'll roll in here to the final lap. Looks like he will go for the grass slide just to try it out. Yes. Not able to snap it together. We'll do so again. It's quite good this time, actually. Yeah, a lot of speed on the exit. Very nice. But it is not worth very much. 1 point to be exact. So he will finish in the 15th spot. We see Quadra actually taking first place, ahead of Wosile, then Rozzy, Cap, Evon, Soldier, Default, and Mime. Looks like Mime made a slight mistake, but did not fall out of the top 8. So unfortunate stuff out of Nixo. Will go into the multiplayer round with 26 points. Not the most ideal scenario for him. But again, just grabbing that multiplier is going to be absolutely crucial. As we load into the next and newest map, this will be Throttling, act by... I actually forget who it's by. But this map is going to be very much a pace map. Quite interesting in the sense that it uses a long start sector before the multi-lap, which is quite interesting, as I try to shoo away a massive fly out of nowhere. But yeah, the start of the multi-lap is about 10 seconds, actually. of track that will not be re-driven as they go into their second lap. I think it's kind of interesting because that has not been the case in any of the maps prior, but obviously doesn't make too much of a difference. But to re-explain what we will be seeing on this final map, so we were going to be seeing 8 rounds of 2 laps each, and the winner of each round will win themselves a multiplier of an X amount. So the first 4 rounds will be a ×2. The 5th and 6th round will be ×3. 7th will be ×4, and 8th will be ×5. The increasing multiplier, of course, allows for people or for players to opt out of finishing. We might see that in the future here. So they can opt out for finishing to try and risk for a higher multiplier. We might also see some players just opting for the ×2 or the ×3, depending on how comfortable they are feeling and how much risk they are willing to do. Once a player grabs a multiplier, they will not be competing in the rest of the rounds. So we'll see the field slowly tick down to 9 at the end. It'll be all about full-on pace and a little bit of strategy in this final map. See a lot of players DNFing as they make mistakes, opting to either reset their mind or maybe trying to snoop on other people's lines. Sometimes players will play offline and will try to carry on secret strategies to gain the edge over their competitors. I don't think there will be too many weird lines in this map. As I said again, it is very much a pace map. Very fast paced in general, actually. Nixo likened it to a mix of full speed and tech. Obviously not full speed, as you have to brake a bit, but very high pace, high gear race as we drive into the first set of the identity here. This map is all about balancing. So they go off, the players will drive on 2 different acceleration only blocks. So they are not able to release or brake while they are driving on the balancing act there. So getting the lineup is absolutely everything. As we see, about half the field has made a mistake on that first identity section and will not be in contention for the first place. Nixo here a little bit farther behind. We see, I think that was Hydra, absolutely blundering the chicane. Will completely stop. We also see Link dropping down quite a bit. So then there will be 3 remaining players in the top spots that have not made mistakes, and our Nixo friend here, who currently sits in 4th. Lime and Otak. Definitely players that have been known to throw the end. As we see Mime completely jumping off. Miquacho currently in the lead over Otak. Otak will slow down anyway, so Miquacho will gain a ×2 for himself on 67 points. A good points haul, especially since he sits in the 7th position in the overall standings. So we'll finish with 134, which is a nice healthy margin. And we saw Nixo just finishing in the top 2 in the end. So he has the consistency and the possible pace to do some good here. Nixo will be one of the players who will just take any multiplier. Doesn't matter too much to him what he grabs. Of course, he would much prefer the ×4, ×5, but I don't think he's going to be throwing away anything if he gets the opportunity. Already going into round number 2 here. Yet again, another ×2 spot. But I expect players like Mime, Otak, probably, possibly even Evon here, who has had a great step with 83 points going into this final map. I think they will be at least waiting until the ×3. We'll probably use these ×2 to kind of warm up and judge the pace of other players, as we see Mime makes an absolute blunder of the first balancing act. flies completely off to the side. I think I saw a couple of other players just clipping their wheels as well. If you clip your wheels, I do not think you can pass the. Oh no, we see Nixo flying out on the sausage and immediately will DNF. Will look to reset his mind a bit. Let's ride along with the top spots. Perhaps Link here, currently sitting in third position. You see Soldier and Wosile up in front of him. These are two players I don't expect to opt out of winning this round, so both will probably be pushing as we go into the final part of the lap here. Nice low jumps. Wosile goes a bit tighter on the tech turn. Will just overtake Soldier. Going into the final balancing act. Soldier makes a mistake. Wosile with the last final jump. Will he take it? Yes, he does. He will double his 59 points with a 209.07. Link with the fastest lap, but not enough to catch up to Wosile. Wosile, who will double his points and now accumulate a nice 118. That's a second player that it currently sits in the 5th to 8th position in the league standings. So that's quite interesting as we look at overall standings, especially for upcoming final step. We'll roll straight into the third round here. Get another ×2. Nixo does not make the same mistake as he did before, and has a pretty good start actually. Currently sitting in 7th spot. So, excuse me. Take the dirt entry nice and smooth, as well as the exit, and then positions himself well for the little plastic bounce here. Pretty awkward line, awkward landing at times, especially with the downward reactor booster basically being rocketed into the ground. But no matter how awkward it feels, it will not lose out too much speed, as we see quite a few mistakes. So suddenly finds himself in that third position as we roll into lap number 2 here. As discussed before, OTAC will likely not take this ×2. Energy Z, on the other hand, may. So yeah, we see OTAC. I don't know if that was a mistake. I think it was, probably. I don't think he would have purposely DNF'd at that point. But Nixo now currently sitting in 2nd spot. Will have to recover his light touch at the beginning of the lap. His Energy Z is currently sitting 0.8 seconds in front. Going into the half pipe jump here. Takes a little bit longer for a smoother step. Oh my goodness, Energy Z has completely fallen off. That only leaves one identity section left. Oh, he did this. Okay. All right. He has decided to opt out of it. I remember him discussing this with me before, thinking that he might just have to go for ×5s at this point. And it looks like that is his mentality. So we will not see a double points from Nixo. We will in fact see it from Default, who will capitalize on the choices of his component or opponent. So Nixo will actually opt for a higher multiplier. This is quite interesting. He clearly feels as his pace is good enough, which it is. We've seen him now finish in he had a 2nd place finish on round number 1, and then a mistake, and then decides not to grab a 1st in round number 3. So his pace is there, and we'll see how these next rounds unfold. At least sitting in the 8th position, just a little bit wide on the dirt. We'll lose out about a 10th or so. We see one player absolutely eating the jump. I think that was Fegley. Unfortunately, will drop down. You see a number of players of making mistakes on the balancing sector. Nobody makes a mistake on the second one. Like perhaps the first one is the more challenging to line up. Rolling into lap number 2 here. Nico currently sitting in 6th position. Mime leading by a healthy margin, 0.4. As we see, Link decides to bounce completely off of the sausage block, similar to what Nixo did in the second round of this map. So he will bump up to 4th thanks to that mistake, and look to hunt down the top 3. Cap will make it easy and decides to not finish this lap. That leaves Mime and Soldier. Again, Mime will probably opt out of this, and we've seen Nixo decide not to take a ×2 as well, so this could be Soldier's for the taking. Mime will clip his wheel on the outside and slowly meander his way down the balancing. So yes, indeed, Soldier will double 64 points. Razi was able to pip Nixo right at the end, but that won't phase him too much. That is another top 3 finish for our RBG Esports competitor. We are now into the ×3 zone. The next 2 rounds again will be ×3. So all of a sudden you're getting an extra 20, 30, 40 points just by winning this round and possibly the next one. Nixo again with a pretty good start, currently sitting in 6th position, about 0.2 of a second back from, it was Link, but now it's going to be Hydra, as Link goes a little bit wide and probably has to do a release in order to make the corner. Hydra just barely able to hold on to that. I think they were doing a speed slide there on the exit. We see another player making a mistake on the reactor jump. I believe it was Evon this time around, so he will drop down quite a bit. We see Razi completely falling off of the balancing act. Link as well. We see Mime and Nixo unfortunately will clip. I do not think, well, looks like he will look to practice this identity with quite a number of other players, as all 3 of them decided they were not going to be able to make it. So Nixo will, he does decide to practice identity, but will DNF for now. So we'll go ahead and run with Otak, currently sitting in the 3rd position, right behind Hydra and NRGZ. If either of these players decide to drop out, I do not think they will. Hydra will look to claw back the deficit to NRGZ here, and Otak will probably be looking just to practice his identity section and see how much time he can gain. He does gain quite a bit to the top 2, actually, closing that gap down to under a second. Going into the final identity sector here, nobody makes any mistakes. We'll take the jump quite high, but NRGZ will grab himself a ×3 on 36 points. Hydra will have to battle or continue battling to try and get a multiplier for himself. So NRGZ will bump 36 into 108 and currently sits in 5th in the overall step standings. Looking at the overall ranking here, that is now 3 out of, actually all 4 of the positions 5th through 8th have now gained a multiplier this round, which is very, very interesting, and not ideal for those who are hunting to try and get into the top 8. So anybody near the edge would probably like to see all 4 of those players, being NRGZ, Default, Wozell, and Miquatro. We would have liked to see them not get any bonus points for this step, but it is not going to be the case. It'll be pretty tight going into step number 8. I'm not sure too many of the players will be thinking about that just yet, as they focus on this sixth round. Going into the balancing act here, we see Mai make a mistake. Evon will fall off. Otak will clip just enough. He can probably make the jump, but he decides it's not worth his time. Does DNF, and that leaves Nixo in the third position here, right behind Cap and Link. Cap goes super tight, but ends up paying off for him, able to gain a little bit of time. Nixo just barely holding on to the grip on the sausage, but that will gain him extra speed, and he overtakes Link. Now hunting down Cap. Great speed here. Goes super wide. No, but just too wide. Just barely clips his wheels. Will fall down. So we'll jump on board with Link here, who currently sits in third. Rozzy has made an absolute charge into the top positions. And Link goes very low on the quarter pipe and able to catch up to the top two. It's going to be super tight at the very end here. Link and Rozzy just barely with each other. Cap still in it. Cap with a crazy amount of speed on the balancing act, but goes super high. Does DNF, so Link will grab the ×3 spot over Rozzy. Only 0.02 of a second between the two of them. Very nice out of Link there. Will jump up to a nice healthy 129 total. And that does actually put him in the top 8. So he was sitting in 12th position overall in the league standings, and now he sits in 8th position. We see how important these multipliers can be as we roll into now ×4 spot. This is going to be round number 7. Many of the highest point holding players right now, that being Evon, Mime, and Otak, are still in the fight. Likely would have been opting to focus more on this and the final round, but we see Evon completely crashing out. I believe that was Revolution, sorry. They both are driving with lighter skins. Nixo here in the 6th position now, only about a quarter of a second back from the leader, who is Mime. We've seen Mime make quite a few mistakes on this first balancing act, but is able to survive for now. We see Rozzy and Cap, I believe, messing up on the second balancing act, so they will drop down as we roll into the second of the 2 laps here. Very close to the top. I think none of these players will be passing up a ×4, as the risk between focusing on only ×5 and just having the ×4 is pretty high. If you focus only on the top 5, that means you have to win that top 5. Otherwise, you aren't getting any sort of bonus out of this step. Nixo again goes super wide, does release this time around, as he decides not to try and push it. Oh, but he goes too tight and clips his wheel on the inside. Will immediately DNF. Very, very unfortunate stuff here, but we will ride along with Hydra for the final part of this lap. Hydra going super tight on the jump, able to set himself up well for the balancing act, but he will not gain enough room to Mime. So long as Mime decides to take this final ×4, he does indeed. He will multiply his 67 ×4 with a 209.209. Very fun to say. But will get and nab himself a healthy 201 additional points, bumping up to 268. Huge haul out of Mime here. And will, I mean, he was certainly secured for a playoff spot before, but that will help him greatly to gap his close competitors out of Otak and Evon. Well, Evon is about half the amount of points that Mime has, but still sitting in 3rd position. So Mime with a very healthy 1st place, so long as Otak does not get this top 5. But unfortunately, we see a mistake out of Nixo, and he will immediately DNF as well. I think he might have just decided to leave as well, because his name is no longer in the 5 ranking. So unfortunately, not the best step out of Nixo here. He will look to do a little bit better in the final step next week, but we'll roll out with the last of the rounds here, riding along with Evon in the 4th position. Never mind, he makes a mistake himself. So we'll just jump on with Otak here in 2nd position, hunting down Cap. It's really just going to be Otak and Cap. Pegley currently in 3rd, only about 1 second back. But unless both of these players make a mistake, make that one more player making a mistake, then Pegley will be out on this one. So Otak now sitting very nicely. I believe he's the only player minus Pegley who has not made a mistake on this final round. So quite an eventful round and pretty difficult to follow along with. But we're doing our best here. Pegley close enough to Otak that Otak can't take it too easy. But he does take the jump quite high for his usual standards. Lines up the first balancing act and then the second. Not too big of an issue. So he will get the ×5 for himself. Bumps his 40 into a 200. And that will round out our step number 7. Pegley just missing out on the top 5 by a second. Unfortunate stuff from him. But there we have it. Mime wins step 7. Nixotica, not the best step out of him, unfortunately. We'll look to bounce back for the final step of the season, which of course will be next week. Same time as today. Sunday, December 4th? 5th. December 5th. So yeah. Feel free to join us then. I have been Snowman, of course, and I've had the lovely honor of casting for the RGB crew. Of course, I have to thank Vault, my handyman in the background, able to put the stream together very well, as always. Be sure to follow the Twitch stream here and Twitter and all the other social medias to keep up to date with everything that RGB Esports is up to. They have a lot of cool and interesting teams that you should definitely check out, as I have done as myself. It's good stuff. But anyway, thank you for joining us for this step number 7. It was a very interesting fight, even if our main competitor did not have his brightest day. But that's how it goes in competition sometimes. So anyway, I again have been Snowman. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.